Here's the thing with these trade tree videos. We never actually know if a trade tree is going to be interesting until we do the research. I'll tell you straight up, we've fully researched trade trees before that I'm like, oh, this is going to be great, and then we go, this actually stinks, and we never make it. With this trade tree I'm about to tell you about, I wasn't that excited about it when I started. But the implications within this tree are massive. Let's create the trade tree for the time the Edmonton Oilers traded David Perron to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now this is a decently quick one. Not all trade trees are going to be 40-50 minute epics like the Lindros and Gretzky videos, although we are working on some much longer ones soon. But this trade tree starts with a tale as old as trade tree time. A bad team sells and a good team buys. In this case, we feature the Pittsburgh Penguins, who every single year they have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on the team that they're buying. They're trying to win the Stanley Cup. The Edmonton Oilers, on the other hand, were trying to be as bad as possible because what we're featuring right now is the 2014-15 season, otherwise known as the Connor McDavid sweepstakes. Here's how ridiculous the Connor McDavid sweepstakes were and why so many teams were desperate to be bad. If you finish last place but lose the draft lottery, you get Jack Eichel. If you finish last and win the draft lottery, you get Connor McDavid. Actually, all you have to do is finish close to last to have a really good shot at Connor McDavid. So, okay, who are the good players on our team? David Perron? We have David Perron? Get rid of him! After a great start to his career with several seasons with the St. Louis Blues, David Perron ended up with the Edmonton Oilers and had his best season. 28 goals, 29 assists for 57 points in 78 games. The following season, 5 goals, 14 assists for 19 points in 38 games. Ooh. Now, in David Perron's defense, in part due to injuries and in part due to the Oilers were really bad that year, only 2 players had over 40 points, Jordan Eberle and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And despite the drop-off in production, the Oilers got a ransom for Perron. This is a good trade. The trade was David Perron going to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for Rob KLINKHAMMER and a 2015 first rounder. KLINKHAMMER, okay, fine, but a first round pick for David Perron, that's a good haul for the Oilers, but it's also a lot for the Penguins to pay. Well, hopefully Perron was good for them in their playoff run. Nope. 5 games played with the Pittsburgh Penguins, those playoffs, 1 assist, and that's it. Now, I want to save the Oilers for last. We're going to continue to follow the Penguins down this tree here. Because yes, while the Penguins did give up a lot for Perron, given his playoff production, they got him the next year too. So how did he do? In 43 games, he had 12 goals, 10 assists for 22 points. Not bad, but still not returning to that real great 28-goal season he had in Edmonton. How did he do in the playoffs? He didn't play in the playoffs that year and wasn't on the Penguins anymore. And this is where it gets juicy. The Penguins trade David Perron to the Anaheim Ducks. He switched birds straight up in exchange for speedy winger Carl HAGELIN. And he was good during the 2016 stretch run. After arriving in Pittsburgh, HAGELIN had 10 goals, 17 assists for 27 points in 37 games. But none of that matters. How did he do in the playoffs? How did he do? How did he do? You might remember 2016 as the birth of the famous HBK line with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Why was it called that? Were they big fans of Shawn Michaels and DX and all that? I mean, they might be, but the H stood for Carl HAGELIN. The B stood for Nick Bonino. Does anyone remember if he scored any memorable goals? And the K stood for Phil Kessel. Brand new to the Penguins that season. That line for the Penguins, which was technically the Penguins' third line behind Crosby's line and Malkin's line, was monstrous! Respectively, they finished first, third, and fifth on the Penguins in playoff scoring. HAGELIN had 6 goals and 10 assists for 16 points in 24 Stanley Cup playoff games. Nick Bonino, playing the role of playmaker, scored 4 goals, 14 assists for 18 points in 24 playoff games. He had as many points as Malkin, who has a Conn Smythe under his belt, by the way. And speaking of Conn Smythe, number 1 was the Conn Smythe winner, Sidney Crosby. No, it wasn't. It was Phil Kessel leading the Penguins in scoring that year. 10 goals, 12 assists, 22 points in 24 games. This initial David Perron trade with the Edmonton Oilers, where the Penguins looked like they got robbed, ended up getting the Penguins an integral part of their 2016 Stanley Cup win. Now, unfortunately, HAGELIN didn't have nearly as much individual success with the Penguins the following season. 22 points in 61 games. And during the Stanley Cup playoffs in 15 games, he had just 2 goals and no assists. And not a single Penguins fan cares on account of they won the Stanley Cup again. So the Penguins got a player who helped them win 2 cups, even if it was a big role and then a reduced role. In 195 games with the Penguins, HAGELIN added 27 goals and 83 points in the regular season. Oh, and 2 cups in the playoffs. 2019, it's not going as well. All right, let's try to mix it up. It's time for another trade. And we can go through this part of the trade tree quickly because the Penguins side turns into a bit of a, well, you'll see. Carl HAGELIN was traded straight up for Tanner Pearson. That's it. Pearson's career in Pittsburgh lasted just 44 games, 9 goals, 5 assists for 14 points, before he was promptly traded in another straight-up trade 1-for-1. This time it was the Penguins sending Tanner Pearson in exchange for Erik Goodbranson, a former 3rd overall pick. He somehow played even fewer games with the Penguins than Pearson did. In 26 games, he had no goals and 2 assists. That's it. Goodbranson was then traded for forward ANDREAS Martinsen, who never played a game for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and a 2021 7th rounder. So at least it ends on a mysterious note because this part of the Penguins trade tree keeps going. The Penguins kept this draft pick and used it to draft defenseman Ryan McCleary, who plays in the WHL for the Portland Winterhawks and is 6'2". But after a 2-cup run, the Pittsburgh Penguins side of this trade tree is done. So, what did the Oilers get? We got to go back in time, get into the mindset of the Edmonton Oilers at the draft in 2015. You laugh your way into the building because you won the draft lottery. You won! You get the 1st overall pick, a free ticket to Connor McDavid, a once-in-a-generation player. And you have the 16th overall pick because the guy you sent to the Penguins didn't even do anything for them in the playoffs. So the Oilers draft Connor McDavid 1st overall. I don't think they have any regrets about that. What do they do with the 16th overall pick? They package it with another pick to get the 4th overall pick from 3 years ago. The Edmonton Oilers sent the 16th overall pick and a high second, 33rd overall to the New York Islanders in exchange for defenseman and former 4th overall pick Griffin Reinhart. Some trades are bad for what they are. Some trades are bad for what they aren't. This one manages to be both at the same time. We'll talk about what it is so that we can end the actual trade tree. Griffin Reinhart played 29 games for the Edmonton Oilers, added 2 assists, he had 1 in the playoffs as well in his defense, and then he was promptly lost to Vegas in the expansion draft. Last year, Reinhart played in the DEL, the German league, with the Iserlohn Roosters, which is, it's just a fun name to say. So what were the Oilers thinking, okay, we're getting this big, bruising defenseman, and he's going to be an integral part of our team going forward, and he's going to help protect Connor McDavid, and we got all these other guys like Taylor Hall and Jordan Eberle who we're totally not going to ditch, and it didn't work out. C'est la vie. What did that 16th overall pick happen to be again? This is where we get into how this trade is bad for what it isn't. When the Islanders call the Oilers, they should stop picking up the phone. They should really stop picking up the phone. Go and watch the Jordan Eberle trade tree, or don't. Like I mean, it might make you feel bad depending on who you cheer for. And you might say to yourself, hey, drafting, who knows with drafting? Maybe the Oilers didn't even like Barzal. Okay, fine. Maybe they wouldn't have picked Barzal. The next pick was Kyle Connor. Maybe they didn't like him either. The next pick was Thomas Chabot. 2 picks later was Joel Eriksson Ek. 2 picks after him was Ilya Samsonov. Goalies? Anyone need one? The pick after Samsonov was Brock Besser. The pick after Besser was Travis Konechny. A blue and orange team did make off with 2 amazing first-round picks that day, and it was the Islanders, with Barzal at 16th and at 28th, Anthony Beauvillier. Can you imagine the way that draft would be talked about if the Oilers walk away? They walk out of the building laughing with Connor McDavid and Matthew Barzal, or Connor McDavid and Kyle Connor, Connor McDavid and Thomas Chabot. This is why they call draft picks magic beans, because the magic beans don't do anything unless you give them proper water and sunlight. And by proper water and sunlight, I mean pro and amateur scouting. For the Oilers, this trade tree starts great and ends terribly. For the Penguins, this trade tree starts horribly and ends with 2 Stanley Cups. Well, actually, it ends with a 7th rounder, but in the middle, there were 2 Stanley Cups. And speaking of, David Perron has taken a bit of a beating in this video, but I'll remind everyone that he went back to St. Louis and in 2019 won his Stanley Cup. So that is it for this week's trade tree. Leave a comment in the comment box down below. What do you think of this deal? For now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends that I will be back next week with my tutorial on how to water magic beans.